So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
Everybody in this room knows exactly what's going on. And it's so infuriating to us. The best way for SNAP benefits to be paid on time is for the Democrats to end their shutdown. And that could happen right now if they would show some spine.
That is Speaker Johnson, who might be calling his Republican House members back. Day 27, and it looks like the base of the Democratic Party is beginning to break. If not their voters, and evidently some senators got to be wrangled, but one of the biggest unions in the country said sign the CR and get back to work. 2 Democrats.
Number 2.
This guy is somebody who's got real chops, and that transcends what you stand for, right or left or somewhere in between. I think that's why he's poised to win, why he won so convincingly in the primary earlier this year.
Governor Cuomo closes in on Madami as Main Street Democrats begin to fall in line for the 34-year-old communist. They kissing his feet. Hakeem Jeffries on Sunday and Mayor Pete on Monday. Meanwhile, Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey picks up more Democratic mayoral support in New Jersey. Will that convert to a win?
Number 1.
It's a whirlwind presidency. He's taking on more major issues than any president I can ever remember. I mean, sometimes, issues are thrust on presidents. He's come into office and taken on 4 major foreign policy initiatives.
It takes a lot to impress Brit Hume, and he's pretty impressed. The Trump trip, a massive success so far, and attitude is everything. He's energized. He's cutting rare earth deals with Malaysia, inspiring address to troops with Japan and the prime minister there to also address our troops, who they then turned around and did Japan committed to spending between $350 and $500 billion in American products, including opening up Toyota plants. And a surprise summit with Kim Jong-un could end this trip. But in between on Thursday is going to be a meeting with President Xi. Joining us now, Mike Pillsbury. Michael, we're hearing good things about a possible deal with China. What are you hearing?
Well, the same thing, Brian. A key word that's being used is the framework, not an actual deal that will be signed with dollar amounts of soybeans or exactly when the next shipment of rare earth magnets will come. It's not that kind of deal. It's so-called framework, is the word Scott Bessent has used several times now. That, to me, means no details are agreed to yet. It's awfully hard to get Xi Jinping, who's under threat himself from internal politics for his mistakes, to get him to come to the table is President Trump's first big miracle, I think. The second miracle is the patience President Trump has shown. He had Scott Bessent go off to Madrid, Stockholm, London, Geneva, almost every European capital for these 1 or 2 day meetings. They didn't produce any agreement either. They kept using the phrase, well, we had constructive talks. That means no deal was struck. So we're still going down to the wire in this meeting, which sometimes it takes 2 or 3 hours for even it's called the summit one-on-one. 2 or 3 hours where the 2 heads of state are going to go back and forth. I think they won't be bickering. I don't think it'll be an auction. I don't think Xi Jinping will say, how about 100 billion soybeans? And Trump then say, how about 200 billion soybeans? It won't be like that. But we need to see some kind of action come out of this meeting. Worst case is they cancel the trips they've already announced. Mr. Trump has said he and Melania are going to Beijing in about 3 months. And then he's invited Xi Jinping and his wife, Madame Peng, who's actually a general in the military, a folk singer, that they're coming to Washington, D.C. So that's the good news is that if those 2 trips take place in the coming 6 months or so, we can get more concessions on trade, more jobs for Americans, and a safer Taiwan. If there's a walkout, the worst case, there's a walkout or the meeting is canceled at the last minute or they can't agree on anything at the meeting. So what I'll be watching for, Brian, is something in between the walkout, canceling the future trips, or kumbaya, China is going to buy 200 billion in soybeans in the next 3 or 4 years. That would be
actually. I think they're going to start buying immediately. The word is they might have gone beyond framework in the last 24 hours, and they're really optimistic it's going to be a major deal, including immediately buying soybeans. That's the key. If you ask these farmers, they need them sold yesterday. So you can't be like, okay, it's coming down the pike. I'll see you in a month, and we're going to send ships there. We'll get to. No. It's got to be right away. So, and we're not asking a favor. We got the best stuff and for the best price that have already been a proven commodity for China. And I understand, too, the rare earth deal, at least for a year, they won't touch it. But I think the U.S. made huge progress in trying to counter that checkmate that they have. And that's Malaysia signing a minerals deal. That's Thailand signing a processing deal.
Right.
And that is a deal with Australia. And I think Argentina is also on the precipice, including getting some of these Central and South American countries to leave the Belt and Road program like China did. So I think there might be some movement.
Yeah, that's the optimistic side, Brian. I'm trying to give you both sides. In terms of soybeans, they promised very specifically last time in January 2020, and then they didn't do it. And everybody kept waiting day by day after Xi Jinping signed the deal. And he never bought additional soybeans, nothing like what he promised to do. That's why I'm underlining the bad side for you, the downside. This kind of summit isn't necessarily scripted. You know, the topics are brought up by either side, and there's no sort of checklist. Okay, now we talk about Taiwan. Now we talk about ring magnets. That's what concerns me always, is when you don't have a draft communique ready to be signed by the two leaders, which they've made clear they don't have yet. Things can go bad.
So I want you to hear what they did do. Evidently, China is really pushing Trump on Taiwan to soften his support. They want Trump to come out and say he does not support an independent Taiwan. He wants him to say Trump opposes Taiwan's independence. He said to incrementally move it forward, and the next leader gets closer and closer to saying essentially, do with Taiwan what you did with Hong Kong, just go take it back. So they're really hyper-focused on this. And, you know, Trump has not dug in like past presidents on Taiwan, although he says, I don't think they're going to take it, and I think he would back it. In fact, he's been critical of them to a degree, and he's right, saying stop spending 2% on your GDP, do it 5%. And they said, we will. And they say, why have you locked up all the chips? We should be sharing in that, but a free market goes to where it wants to. Your thoughts about China's focus on Taiwan, and what would that mean to them for the president to say he does not support an independent Taiwan?
Well, you're right. But right now, our position has been for 7 presidents. In Mandarin, we say, "Biao zhichi." Zhichi means support. We don't support independence for Taiwan. That's the current situation. President Trump's already endorsed that in a Truth Social about a month and a half ago. Part of getting to these talks is he tweeted or X'd, I support the one China policy. Now, what Beijing wants, and you're quite right, there's heavy pressure from Beijing. I don't think President Trump's going to give into it. They want him to say something they've asked previous presidents. The previous presidents have all said no. They want him to say, we oppose. In Mandarin, it's fan dui. We oppose independence. That implies we'll do something to stop the trend on Taiwan toward independence. This is a huge issue between Pompeo and Trump. Pompeo twice flew to Taiwan and said, I am for immediate diplomatic recognition of Taiwan. Trump won't do that. Trump says, no, I'm sticking with the previous 7 presidents that I don't support. So that's where we're left. I would be astonished if Trump went all the way and said, I oppose and I will intervene to prevent Taiwan going independent. That's the big issue. But you're quite right. This is this is the biggest issue of the meeting.
So Michael, the one thing I believe is happening is that I think China's got real problems. And the real estate problem that they have, the commercial real estate, the fact that nobody wants to invest there, that new companies aren't opening up there because of the restrictions. They thought, well, we're going to put up with it because we want their market. It doesn't look like the Chinese have any excess income. They have no social safety net, so they're not spending. So when we say, well, we want to open up the markets to American products, I even think to myself, so what? They can't buy anything. The younger people aren't working. And they don't seem to have, at this point, much national pride. That's, you know, the patriotic pride that they maybe had in the past. We know about the damage the one-child policy has had on their country. And even though they're very smart in locking up rare earth and smart to build up their military and smart to try to get in to all these countries with the Belt and Road program, I don't necessarily think it's working out too well.
Well, they're afraid of their own economic deterioration. You're quite right about that. The problem Trump faces, I think, is things that Biden could have done but did not do. One of them is the rare minerals. They knew about this, but they took none of the steps President Trump is taking, and God bless him for doing it. Biden could have done all that himself. He could have had a new agreement with Malaysia and Australia. He could have nailed down, no export licenses for global ring magnet exports. Biden didn't do any of that. In fact, Biden didn't even have one round, Brian, not even a single round of trade talks by this woman named Catherine Tai, who probably no one's ever heard of. She's the head of USTR. So their economy could be in trouble, but that does not affect the nationalism of Xi Jinping and his ability to run China into the ditch. He could make economic mistakes, make the economy even worse, just to look tough against Mr. Trump. Again, Brian, I'm trying to introduce you to the downside of what could happen. Partly, knowing the downside means if Trump succeeds, this is a miracle. This is a huge achievement, just to get to the meeting and get a framework done. I'll be applauding and having a glass of champagne high in the air if just that much happens.
And listen, I agree with everything, and no one knows China better than you. You wrote a book about it, and you spent your career there. But I will say the pandemic and the election has a lot to do with China not fulfilling what they were supposed to be doing. We even forgot about phase one of this trade deal because Trump lost and the pandemic came in, and they did it and have not paid one dime in restitution for it. So we don't really think about phase one. So I do think that factors in to a degree. But get this, I think China reportedly is starting to level off on their Russian oil purchases. And I got a report that they're going to make an announcement about that and the war in Ukraine. Now, look, we know they're tighter with Russia than they are with us. I get it. I'm totally, my eyes are wide open. But when it's a detriment to them on the global stage and they're looking to win us over to get access to our markets or relief on tariffs, they might be saying, you know what, guys? Take your foot off the gas, because they did not have bad relations with Ukraine prior to the invasion.
That's right. And China actually has its own Ukraine peace plan. It's kind of pro-Russian, but it's halfway. It's partly in between the American plan and China's own ideas. But what I'm afraid about is Trump needs to get a lot of credit if this works out. And I don't think we should be casual or overly optimistic that it's going to happen for sure because we're strong and China's weak. It could happen. I hope it does. But a huge amount of effort's gone into this by President Trump in his second term. In his first term, as you and I know very well, Brian, he was always fighting with Rex Tillerson or Jim Mattis or John Bolton.
That's what I was just talking about.
So now he's got a real team that works for him. And I wish them a huge celebration if they pull this off.
Right. And I think that Rubio says, when asked his opinion, he knows to do it, but he knows who he'll give it. And he knows, but he's he's very tough on China. Didn't China ban him from traveling there? I don't know if that's going to be even alleviated for this trip, even though they're going to meet in South Korea if it ever happens. So I know he's just as tough on China, maybe as Pompeo, but he's going to say, Mr. President, what do you need me to do? And then he's going to say, if he says, Marco, what do you think? Marco will tell him. And that's what works. Right. And that's basically what works in companies.
Marco Rubio won me over, Brian, when he held up a copy of my book on the floor of the Senate and said everybody should read The 100-Year Marathon by Michael Pillsbury. So you can't be more of a fan than I am of Marco Rubio. But I think you're right. He knows who the boss is, and he's put aside some of his really harsh anti-communist views in order to follow this Trump strategy of the two couples exchanging state visits in the coming year. That's the success that I'm really looking for, because more concessions can come out of China, Brian, once they get past this obstacle and start looking for even more details. And frankly, I think President Trump wants China to help the American growth rate. Remember, bringing back our jobs, expanding the markets in China under pressure for our companies. This is part of President Trump's dream that he wrote in a book 15 years ago, very clearly. But he also said in that book, the Chinese are the world's best negotiators. He says, I decided not to invest in China because they're such good negotiators, I couldn't make any profit out of it. So Trump's got a kind of a positive view of how the negotiating skills of the Chinese side. That's why I say it'll be a miracle if he pulls all this off.
But by the way, whether he believes it or not, it's a great thing to say. for a country that prides itself on its pride. Hey, you guys are great. You're going to get over on me. I'm a little wary about going in here. It's a great play, So, Michael Pillsbury, I should have booked you on Friday. That's what I should have done to analyze the aftermath of the meeting. But thanks. It's always great to have you on. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Listen, we're going to keep our fingers crossed. It's going to work. The markets, I tell you, are pretty convinced over the last 2 days that it's going to work. Back in a moment. Congressman David Kustoff joins us now from Tennessee, Ways and Means, chairman of the House Committee on the Knesset Parliamentary Friendship Group, which, by the way, is extremely needed. We need constant vigilance on this Gaza deal with Hamas and the Parliamentary Friendship Group with the Israeli Knesset. It's one of his focuses. Congressman, right now, I hear that the speaker's close to bringing you back to Washington. Have you heard that?
Brian, good morning. In fact, we're going to have a call to Republican congressman with Speaker Johnson in about an hour, so we're going to get more direction. I do think that the speaker's strategy has been exactly right, and it's unfortunate the way things have evolved. But just as a reminder, the House of Representatives over a month ago, September the 19th, took this vote to authorize a clean continuing resolution so the federal government would continue to operate. I mean, it is basic stuff, and we passed it out of the House with virtually no Democrat support, one Democrat congressman. So the Speaker has been right in saying that, you know what, this is all on the United States Senate because the House of Representatives has done its part. Now the Senate has voted something like 12 times on the same continuing resolution that we voted on and that we passed in September. It is real, and my thinking is that the Democrat senators need to pass this clean continuing resolution. No one-off bills to pay one group of employees or another group or to keep SNAP. We need to do all of it, and we need to do all of it in one vote. But we'll know more a little bit later this morning once we have that phone call with Speaker Johnson.
All right. But if you go back, one of the things that they were saying, they want to avoid swearing in this Arizona congresswoman because it would narrow the balance between between the Democrats and Republicans. Anything to that?
Once we're back in and we're in regular order, then that new congressman-elect will get sworn in, and the Speaker has decided, and I think rightly so, that we haven't been in session since September the 19th. That is the fault of the Democrats. But as soon as we come back in and we're fully functioning, then she'll be sworn in as a new member of Congress.
How do you feel about Mondami? He's up now. His point, it was a 20-point lead. Now it's down to a 10-point lead over the famed Governor Cuomo. Here he is. Now wants to make 9/11 about him. Listen to this, cut 16.
I want to use this moment to speak to the Muslims of New York City. I want to speak to the memory of my aunt who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Right. And by the way, that is what 9/11's about, how people feel, Muslims felt unsafe in the subway. Are you kidding? And then it turns out it gets worse. It turns out there was no aunt. Cut 17.
Yes, I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zerafui, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And for the takeaway from my more than 10-minute address about Islamophobia in this race and in this city to be the question of my aunt tells you everything about Andrew Cuomo and his inability to reckon with a crisis of his own making.
So they couldn't even find this aunt. It made no sense. He probably made it up, and he got choked up too. What do you think about this candidate that Jon Stewart seems to love?
Well, it's kind of throwing spaghetti up against the wall and seeing what sticks. The fact of the matter is, after 9/11, a lot of people in New York and all over the country were afraid to do a lot of things, like getting on an airplane for a period of time. I'm deeply concerned, obviously, with his past comments that is anti-Semitic, that are anti-Semitic, that border on anti-Semitic, and you've got something like 650 rabbis who have signed a letter urging people, certainly their congregations and others, not to vote for him. It's ironic to me that the city that represents free markets and capitalism and the center of the financial world could, in fact, after the election, be governed by somebody who's a socialist. And to me, that I'm in Tennessee. We have a lot of businesses that move from New York to Tennessee for a lot of different reasons, including no state income tax and no inheritance tax. It would be good for Tennessee if Mondami wins, but it's certainly bad. It's certainly
for the country.
Bad for
it's
the
terrible
nation.
for the
It's bad
country.
for New York. Absolutely.
How about this? Can you imagine being at an event in America and saying tax the rich? They were chanting "tax the rich" in Forest Hills. By the way, for the record, 6 out of every $10 for New Yorkers goes to the city, state, and federal dollars. How much more do you want the successful people to work, and how little money should they keep?
Well, I think the governor heard the crowd chant "Let's go Bills."
Did you believe that? You're not kidding. No, that's what she said.
No. Which is absolutely amazing. We just had these debates on Capitol Hill when we passed the one big beautiful bill to lower everybody's tax burden nationwide. Obviously, Mondami's taking the exact opposite message, but there's no doubt that will further drive people out of New York City and out of New York State to other places. What this giant surge in early voting in New York City means is anybody's guess. I suspect that there are older voters who are concerned, who are going to the polls, who are not voting for Mondami during early voting. But it's an example, Brian, what we know about every election. Number one, we can look at polls all day long. I think every poll before November 2024 showed that Trump wasn't going to win any of the swing states, the 7 swing states, or wasn't going to win very many.
Yeah.
He won all of them. So it really doesn't matter until the election is done. But, for the sake of New York City, people need to vote. They need to vote for somebody other than Mondami. But politically, if that guy wins, he is the new face of the Democrat Party.
No question.
It's something that me and other people are going to be talking about
and believe me, not only that, no one's going to run from him. Hakeem Jeffries took until 2 days ago to not endorse him. Schumer still hasn't. Gillibrand still hasn't. But he'll be somebody that raises a lot of money like AOC and Bernie Sanders and get big crowds. But you're not going to win over the people of Indiana. You're not going to win over the people of Wisconsin. You're not going to win these seats by marching out a 34-year-old unproven socialist who would be called a communist if it was legal.
That's right. And you look at other elections, Brian, nationwide. There are local elections where, in San Francisco, for example, where they elected a far left woke DA only to recall him because the policies were too far left. The people of the city of New York are gonna greatly regret it if they elect him as the mayor. But the good thing about elections, again, is it's not done until it's done, and people go out and vote and take their message. And so Cuomo and Curtis need to go out and take their message out to everybody. And they've got to make sure that it translates, that they actually get the people to go vote.
Right. And you got to cooperate. When the president comes in to try to rein in crime, you can't make ICE the enemy. Congressman David Kustoff, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me today.
You got it. Hey, we are back, everybody. With me in studio, great friend of the show, Mayor Glen Jacobs. Made his name in wrestling, but now he's making his name in politics. He's Knox County, Tennessee. And Glen, you were just telling me that even though Tennessee is not suffering from what Texas is, and that is it's a red state that was so attractive that a lot of Democrats ruined their states and went there.
Yeah.
You say it's not the case in Tennessee.
From what I've observed now, obviously it's probably going to be different in different areas. For example, Nashville is a big city. It's like the hip city now. So I do think that they get more Democrats moving there. They're also, they're kind of our tech hub. But when you look at East Tennessee, I don't think that's the case. The people that come into East Tennessee are conservatives who are tired of the foolishness in places like California and New York, and even Middle Tennessee. Again, Nashville's in Middle Tennessee, but I've seen some polling come out of there that indicates the people moving there are Republicans, and they're actually more conservative in many cases than our native Tennesseans are, as crazy as that sounds.
I understand that the price in Nashville is so high, people don't even look there, right? So
yeah, and also, Nashville's a great place, but it's become a very big city. Even before the pandemic, you saw this trend where people were moving to mid-sized cities, and I think the pandemic exacerbated that. So we do capture a lot in Knoxville, say Chattanooga, of folks that want to move to Tennessee, but they don't want to move to the big city. They want to move to a more laid-back quality of life.
So how do you think Trump's doing?
In Tennessee, phenomenal. As far as if you're referring to his polling in Tennessee, it is phenomenal.
So how do you think?
I think he's doing great. I don't think there's been a president that has been this effective as far as promoting his agenda and getting his agenda through ever, actually. And you look up and down the line at so many of the things he's been able to do. It's been very impressive thus far.
So I want you to hear somebody who disagrees with you.
Sure.
Vehemently. Cut 47. You want to put your headset?
Yeah. Thanks.
I can't sugarcoat any of this. These are dark days, but we're one of the only countries in the world that time and again has come out of every crisis we faced stronger than we went into that crisis. Folks, it's time to get back up. It's time to get re-engaged. It's time to act, to fight like hell.
So how do you explain the different perception that he says we're in crisis, these are dark days, as opposed to somebody that would go, I don't like this foreign policy, there's too many tariffs, Venezuela worries me, but instead, these are dark days. Have you met people like this? To me, I think these are the most intriguing days possible. Are there everything I love that Trump's doing? No.
Right.
But I love the work ethic. I love the agenda. I love the direction. I understand people don't agree. But how can you disagree that much?
Well,
to dark days.
Well, frankly, President Biden doesn't know what he's saying in many cases, and I think this is one of those. He might be thinking of the Carter years. But nevertheless, I agree with you. None of us are going to agree with everybody on everything, but especially if you look where we had been the past 4 years, what could have happened if Kamala Harris had been president, those would have truly been dark days. I think the country is, for the most part, on the right path. You're always going to have issues come up. That's just the case. You're always not going to agree with everything, but these are not dark days. In fact, I would say this is the light of the tunnel after 4 years of darkness.
I'm going to bring you to another Democrat. It's Kamala Harris herself was asked at the BBC, because there's a huge problem with KJP's book, the press secretary, who said she never knows anything, who's always on his game. I don't know what you're talking about. She's mad at Democrats, right?
Yeah.
So so she's mad at Democrats for throwing out Biden. She still can't understand it. And then there's Kamala Harris, who keeps telling us he was fine, but I was a better candidate. So she gets these questions on both of their book tours. Cut 49.
What I spoke of in the book is that there is a very serious difference between capacity to be president of the United States and the capacity to run for president of the United States. And so it is on that latter piece that I talk about in the book, about my concern about his ability with the level of endurance, energy that it requires, especially running against now the current president.
So let me get this straight. The president of the United States doesn't have to have energy and endurance. You only need that when you're running for office.
That's her explanation that she wrote in the book. That means an editor had to sign off on it.
Look, the poor guy is shaking hands with thin air. He's being led around by the Easter Bunny. Normally, we would either feel sorry for him or we would laugh at him. He's the leader of the free world. There was a real issue. The biggest cover-up in American history was the fact that it was obvious that the president of the United States was in serious mental decline, and no one in his administration was doing anything about it, much less admitting to the problem.
And we're all susceptible because of this. And the last thing I'll do, because we're going to talk about much more than this. Jonathan Karl has a book out about what went down from his perspective on how the Democratic ticket fell apart and then how Donald Trump reemerged. Here's what he said happened as it became clear that Biden couldn't run anymore between Obama and Pelosi. Here's what he said this morning, cut 45.
Joe Biden announces he gets out of the race. Nancy Pelosi gets out in front and supports Kamala Harris, and you report that Barack Obama called her basically asking, what the F did you just do?
Yeah, the two of them had been basically working to try to get Biden out of the race. And they had been adamant that when he gets out, we need to have some kind of a process, whether it be a mini flash primary, something, a meeting of delegates, something. And
Don't just hand it over to Kamala.
Don't just hand it over to Kamala Harris.
Right.
And they had a pact on this. Yeah. And she gets out, and everybody endorses her within hours. You know, Shapiro, Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, that they're all endorsing her within hours. Pelosi actually waits till the next day, but she sees that there's nothing to hold the tide. So she puts out the endorsement, gets this phone call. I actually spoke to somebody who overheard the phone call. And what Obama says is basically, what Nancy, what was that all about? And clearly irritated. Now, I've spoken to people close to President Obama who say he was just kind of giving her, joshing with her and giving her a hard time. I've spoken to another person who, very close to Pelosi, says, no, she was pissed off. She was angry. He was angry. The clear message was, why did you do that?
Have you ever seen such chaos behind the scenes?
I know, right? No. Part of the reason that people got so disillusioned with the Democrat Party in this past election cycle was because they're out front talking about threats to democracy, and then they anoint someone to be their nominee who never even won any primaries or anything like that. You know, for all of his policy faults, President Obama was a pretty shrewd politician, and I think that he understood that was going to come back and bite him, and it did. It just turned people off. And she was a terrible candidate, by the way. And instead of having some sort of process, it was just, oh, this is our person. And again, they're the ones out there running around talking about how Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and then they completely undermine the democratic process themselves.
So how are the tariffs affecting you guys in Tennessee?
I haven't really noticed a whole lot.
Do you have a rural community?
We have a mixed community. Obviously, it's going to increase input prices on some things. But I believe that President Trump uses these more as a negotiating tool.
Yeah.
And you can see that by implementing them, taking them off, doing all the different things he's going to do. So I think at the end of the day, this is going to be something that we have to look back on and see the impact, as opposed to say, what are the ongoing impacts, because they're just shifting all the time.
I know everyone's watching. I mean, you have people in Iowa watching closely what's happening in the Far East because they want to find out about soybeans and their crops because China just stopped buying it.
Right.
Do you have any export that is susceptible to these tariffs or trade?
Again, for us, it's going to be the input prices, say with raw materials. And we do have manufacturing, those sort of things. And that's probably what concerns me more than the export prices, is raising the prices of raw goods, making our manufacturers less competitive.
So when you look right now at what's happening in Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn's going to make a move. She decided enough of Washington, Congress, Senate. She won it at least twice, and now she's going to run for governor. What role will you play in a run for governor? I'm
her treasurer, so I'm helping her out a lot of times.
Does she have enough money?
Yeah, she'll be fine, and her name ID around the state is very high. She has a great political organization, and she's a great campaigner. She's tireless. Now, one thing is, obviously, with her Senate schedule, she can't be everywhere all the time. So people like me are helping out with that. But she is going to be the next governor of the great state of Tennessee. I'm sure of that.
And then when you're done with your term?
I am out September of next year.
September of next year.
Yes, sir.
Would you be open to that Senate seat? Should she get to win the governor? And she's supposed to win.
Yeah, it's way too early for that. I still have almost a year in office. That's what I'm concentrating on. I don't know what my political future looks like, if there is one. Right now, I just want to make sure that she becomes the next governor, and then we'll go from there.
Do you like it enough to want to keep doing it? Because for you told me it's service.
Yeah, it is service. I don't know if I necessarily like it. I feel the reward of being able to do hopefully constructive things in our community. At the same time, I'm actually an introvert, so a lot of these things are kind of, they take a lot of energy from me to do. And I'm also, as weird as this sounds, I'm not a very confrontational person either. I have to really, I have to get out there and do those things. But in the end, yes, the service, especially where our country is, and, you look into what's happening here in the New York City mayoral race and some of these other things, good people have to step up. Because if they don't, I think that our country is really at a tipping point. And if the good people don't step up, I don't know what the future of our country looks like.
So we have the Mayor Mondami. It looks like he's going to win. He's up by 10, but who knows about closing that rapidly. He had a 20-point lead, so it is going down. I think his candidacy is alarming a lot of people who think that how do we run against this while not calling him out.
Right.
Mayor Pete comes out and goes, I like what he's doing, but he won't endorse him. Senator Schumer still has not endorsed him. So when you talk to Democrats, how many people feel like Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Mamdani as opposed to the Manchins and the Fettermans?
In Tennessee, it's going to be more moderates, especially in our part of the country. You get over into Nashville, we have a special election for Congress there. Representative Congressman Mark Green, he resigned. So in December, there'll be a special election. The Republican candidate is Matt Van Epps. The Democrat is a state rep who fashions herself the AOC of Tennessee. So who knows? But I think what happens is I think the Democrat Party, especially in areas of the country, is much more left than their constituents. But I think that many of the Democrat politicians, are so afraid of literally offending or alienating a very small percentage of their own base, which we see with someone like Mamdani. What they're doing is, we don't want to tick these people off. At the same time, we know these policies are going to be disastrous, so we want to play thread that needle of not being too close to him, so when everything falls apart, we can keep it arm's length, but we also don't want to offend a very vocal part of their base.
Because they're young.
Yeah.
Right. And
the young people.
The same people that Turning Point is turned around.
Right.
That's who he excited.
And when we see this in Tennessee, it's also a lot of old people that are just, I don't quite understand, but it's a lot of older folks. I shouldn't say old people, just older folks who, it's almost like they're throwbacks to the 1960s. If that makes sense.
So the one thing is the political correctness has gone out the window. The DEI is no longer in fashion. And also we're ready to celebrate our country's history.
250 years coming up.
What are you guys doing in Tennessee?
The state's already put things in motion. Starting here in a few weeks, we will probably start looking at things to do in Knox County. We're very proud of our history. This is the greatest nation on the planet. The reason is because we celebrate the individual. We celebrate freedom, liberty. We are the beacon to the rest of the world. And that is something absolutely that we should celebrate. We should hold high and hold our heads high.
Mayor Glenn Jacobs, our guest. And Mayor, are you amazed at the party that was taking down statues, embarrassed about our history, took Teddy Roosevelt out of the Museum of Natural History? They tried to take Columbus down wherever they can. It got the video of every Confederate soldier has been destroyed and sidelined somewhere. They're concerned about the history of the White House as they just try to improve it. Can you have both concepts exist in your world?
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on right now. And you look at the White House and it's, I believe that's being privately funded as well.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, great. You're doing an upgrade. I mean, we do it in our city hall. We've done that as well. No, it's just something to be mad about. I wonder at what point does outrage fatigue set in? People can't always be mad about everything all the time. But, with Donald Trump, it's like, it's raining today. It must be Donald Trump's fault. It's hot today. It must be Donald Trump's fault. We've gotten to that point.
See if you agree with me on this. I remember succinctly that Ronald Reagan was mocked constantly. This guy doesn't do anything.
Right,
Everyone else runs the department. He's out of it. And all of a sudden, after he passed away, sadly, after the years of Alzheimer's, people come out of the woodwork and say, greatest president ever. And Democrats go, let's name the airport after him and let's do this. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. I remember being in high school and you guys mocking him to death and he's ruining the country and he's going to get us into a nuclear war. Do you think the same thing's going to happen to Trump? Where people are going to, you think they're always going to have this negative?
Yes. Even with Reagan, you had like Tip O'Neill. And obviously, Reagan and O'Neill disagreed, but they were also able to work together on things. I think there was mutual respect between those two. That's just all gone now. There's just nothing. And I mean, look, they tried to shoot the guy. Okay. I mean, that's fact of the matter. So I don't think that at the end of the day that any of us, even years from now, are going to be sitting around a campfire singing Kumbaya about Donald Trump, which is unfortunate because, again, I think he's been very effective, especially in the second term.
I want to have you back 5 years after he's gone. And I bet you
See if we're right.
and I think that his approval rating will be in the 60s.
Yeah.
Because, look at George W. Bush. He left in the 20s, and he's now at 59%.
But the reason that will happen is because the Democrat policies will fail and there will be more Republicans.
There you
It's
go.
not going to be because the current
Peter,
Democrats think it's the greatest thing
Are you taping this? Okay, because I don't want this to be our first argument with the mayor. Mayor Jacobs.
And I hope that's the case, Brian. But
All right, thanks so much. And your years in wrestling, of course, with Kane, you're a Hall of Famer, and now you're doing your best for Knox County, Tennessee. Mayor, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Julian Epstein joins us now. He served as chief counsel to the House Judiciary Committee and staff director of the House Oversight Committee for 5 to 6 years. Has been a Democrat all his life. Julian, what's your reaction to Democrats now rallying around Mamdani? Hakeem Jeffries on Sunday. Mayor Pete didn't endorse him, but now praising him as basically the future of the party yesterday, putting down Governor Cuomo.
Well, good morning, Brian, and thanks for having me on. I think the hurricane that the Democrats are moving into or swimming into is the fact that every single candidate between now and the 2028 election is going to be asked the question as to whether they support Mamdani, whether they endorse Mamdani, and they're all going to have no real easy or clear answer. They're going to try to dance around that question, and they're going to look silly. What Mamdani represents is economic socialism, a cultural revolution, and an alignment with terrorists, Nazi-like terrorists. And Democrats have sort of made this decision to embrace the very ideas that led them into the wilderness. They got their hat handed to them in the 2024 election, and rather than confronting the fact that they are trying to push onto voters ideas that are very unpopular, they are succumbing to the very forces that led them into the wilderness. This is ultimately a sign of weakness on the part of the party leadership, who fears the insurgent socialist left rather than trying to confront them.
Yeah, here's what Mayor Pete said. Cut 20.
I don't live in New York, but I think he has the capacity to be a great mayor. He, I think, right now has been taking a lot of steps that are not just about winning, but about trying to bring people together, which is something that I think a lot of people didn't see in him or expect from him earlier on in the campaign.
Let me just tell Mayor Pete, no, he's not bringing anybody together. He has people that are supporting him, but he's not adding, he's shedding. And he had over 50% of the vote. The last poll, it's 44-34. So it's a 10-point spread. But Mayor Pete didn't endorse, but he has the ability. And what program is promising? What program? The free buses lose hundreds of millions of dollars. They are so out of money, they're charging you to drive across the city. Congestion pricing now. He's going to make it all free?
Yeah, well, what we've seen in previous generations is they have attempted to confront the challenges, the economic challenges that are in the next coming years. What this idea is, the socialist idea that Mamdani presents, is the idea of just giving free stuff to the downwardly mobile podcast class to usher in a new cultural revolution based on identity. And again, I think the terrorist sympathizer stuff, the fact that Mamdani is photographed with the imam who was an unindicted conspirator in the '93 World Trade Center attack. These are just going to be questions that are, these things are popular with the deep blue, urban, mostly white, progressive community. They're incredibly unpopular with the rest of the country. So what the Democrats, again, are doing is they're choosing to align with progressives who want to be a big fish in a smaller pond, rather than to play to the voters, the general electorate, and be smaller fish in a bigger pond. So this is a sign of weakness. It's a sign, sort of, I think, of self-dealing by progressives. But it is also a sign that I think a Cold War inside the Democratic Party is soon going to become a hot war. And this kind of embrace of the socialist left, I think, is going to spell the end of the Democratic Party as we know it.
Well, what do you think about the No Kings rally? They say predominantly it was middle-aged white women that showed up on a Saturday. It sounds like the women's march when Trump got elected, which the day after, You know, remember Madonna made her famous statement, I kind of dream about blowing up the White House. So what is it? I didn't understand what middle-aged white women have against Trump.
Yeah. I mean, progressive ideology is mostly a white, liberal, college-educated ideology. It's a set of ideas that make people feel good about themselves without really understanding what the practical implications are of the ideas themselves. And it's true. It is very popular amongst white, college-educated women, and that's fine. It's also incredibly unpopular with the rest of the country. But the problem for the Democrats is the charisma, the energy, the fundraising is all on the progressive left side. And so that's who the party's playing to. The party's playing to a very, very small group of people that, again, have the energy, have the fundraising, but they are completely ignoring the rest of the country that does not want a cultural revolution on identity, that does not believe in wrecking the economy and destroying sort of the institutions of the West, which have done more to lift mankind out of poverty than any system ever in the history of the world. And this flirtation, this embrace of the sort of the jihadist left that Mandami clearly represents is something that is just offensive, I think, to 80-90% of Americans. So the party is committing it's going down a suicide march here.
Here's what Harold Ford said, former Democratic congressman, now valuable member of the Five, cut 29.
And I listened to some interviews of his and some speeches, some other presentations he's given, Mr. Mandami. He sounds decisively mad and divisive, not uplifting, not unifying. I didn't hear any words. If you're about to become mayor or governor, an executive in a city or a state, nothing about safety, affordability, caring, pro-growth. All of us are going to do this together. This pitting of people against people is just unnecessary. It's not how you win a race, but not how you start a term. To be the mayor of the most important city, the biggest city, the most vital city in all of the world, certainly the United States, and I would argue all of the world.
So, I mean, you got two mayors, one in San Jose and one in San Francisco, Democrats, that seem to get it, sound like Harold Ford and you, Julian Epstein. And they're still Democrats. They're not Republicans. They're not tempted to be Republicans, but they're trying to get crime down. They're trying to address the homelessness situation. They're trying to be smart with their money. And that's what Harold Ford pointed out. He brought up another city, too, cut 30.
I will remind everybody, we have two mayors in this country. Just a year ago, people talked about these cities as being irretrievably perhaps too far to the left. And I'm a Democrat, not a socialist. Philadelphia elected a woman named Sherelle Parker, who decided to go after criminals, decided to ensure that we prosecuted those. And there's a guy out there in San Francisco named Daniel Lurie, who's decided he's going to work with President Trump on issues that really matter and impact the city. That's the direction my party's going in the future.
That's success leaves clues. Those are the clues I would hope for the country that Democrats would take. Do you find other people agree with you, Julian, or do you find yourself an outcast when you're with your Democratic friends?
I find myself a little bit of an outcast, but I also find that most people secretly agree that the center is where it's at. I mean, most people secretly agree that more cops for fighting crime, closed borders, a balanced energy policy, which is all of the above, minimum requirements on people that they work in order to receive welfare. These are all ideas that come out of the Clinton administration in the 90s. In fact, if you took a snapshot of Clinton's policies in the mid-90s and Trump's policies today, the Venn diagram would be very, very close. They would be very similar. They were similar on crime. They were similar on immigration. They were similar on energy. They were similar on welfare reform. They were similar on cultural moderation. And on economics, the whole idea of socialism that Mandami offers is to give away a lot of free stuff to the downwardly mobile, mostly white podcast class, right? The idea that Clinton represented, and I think in the 90s, and I think Trump represents today, is that the answer to affordability, and by the way, affordability was made bad under the Biden administration because of 20% inflation during his administration. But the answer on affordability is learning how to build, using your agency to confront the economic challenges of the fourth phase of the Industrial Revolution and learning how to build your way out of the affordability problems. The answer of socialists and the increasingly progressive left is to just give up on the future, give up on building, to try to use other people's money to give away free stuff in order to expand what is a declining voter base on the left and build up a bigger electorate, because the working class is abandoning the party. And this is ultimately a plan that won't work politically, and it's a plan that'll kill you economically, because as Margaret Thatcher says, pretty soon you run out of other people's money. That's the problem with socialism. So to answer your question, I think a lot of people agree with what I just said, but they're too scared to say that because they fear the flying monkeys of the progressive online left.
Well, the other thing is you got two Democrats who say, yeah, I like what he does, but they won't endorse him. Governor Hochul says, yeah, I don't agree with any of his programs, but I'll endorse him. And then you have Mayor Pete. This guy could be a great mayor. You going to endorse him? No. Okay. He's actually a mayor, could even though South Bend is a fraction of what New York City is. You might even be able to relate to him, or do something. But no, I'm not going to do it. So they notice that he's getting some big crowds and he's got a smile. But when you hear, Bernie Sanders gets big crowds, AOC gets big crowds, I think people might have a misperception that it's going to lead to big election wins. We're about to find out if this is going to be your, fracturing of a party. If they're going to have to break up, what happened with the Tea Party with the Republicans. It really hurt them because the Tea Party candidates were winning the primaries, but they couldn't win the general. We'll see if that happens with the Democrats.
Yeah, well, big crowds don't really matter if you're turning off 80% of the voters. And that's the problem. They misinterpret the money, the excitement, the support that they get from the NGO and the activist socialist left as some type of endorsement for the idea of moving further left, when in fact the truth is exactly the opposite. The truth is that the party is offending 2/3, 3/4 of the country through the cultural revolution of identity, through this increasingly moving left towards bigger government when the public wants smaller government. And again, this embrace of extremists, the sort of the violent rhetoric and the embrace of jihadist extremists. Yeah. All of these things are intensely unpopular. And while they may have sort of a sugar high from what they think is some type of mandate that they're going to get from a mayoral election next week, where maybe 10-20% of voters will actually turn out, what they're in fact doing is they are creating a Procrustean bed for themselves, because they're going to be asked, as I say, every single Democrat throughout the country and up until the 2020 elections is going to say, do you agree with Mandami on all of these things? And they're going to have to dance around those questions, because in most places, Mandami's notion of some kind of economic and cultural revolution is incredibly unpopular. So the Democrats are just doing it to themselves once again, and we hoped they would learn the election of 2024. They haven't. They're moving in exactly the wrong direction because they're getting pulled by the siren song of the progressive left that they don't realize is leading them off a cliff.
Go get them. Julian Epstein, thanks so much. Appreciate it. So we'll find out. We got an election 1 week from today. We'll see if the Democrats are supposed to win everything. I mean, they're supposed to win in Jersey. They're supposed to win in Virginia. They're going to lose the AG race. Jason Menares is doing great, and that's extremely problematic. Jason Jones is AG, about his text messages. And Jack Ciattarelli's got momentum in the endorsement of 13 Democratic mayors in the very blue New Jersey. You never know. Back in a moment.